Rayanyag ti Lugosur, programa ngagserbi kamang kenrang tayo iti gobyerno probinsyal. Lalo na, iti beneg iti sanggo niyang panlalawigan ti probinsya ng Lugosur. Mangted tinanay ng informasyon kadagiti programa, proyektos, tulong, ken mga sister kadagiti ang problema nga OFW ang kalugaran tayo. Rayanyag ti Lugosur. Tinagaget, Produktibo Presiding Officer, the busy Governor of the Province of Ilocos, Ryan Luis Singson, our main anchor, Ken Lito Javier, our co-anchor, Ryan Nyag Tilocosur, at tuyen ngagsubli ngagserbi kada kayo, ang sipod, tada kayo, ti inspirasyon mi, Ryan Nyag Tilocosur, da kayo, ti inspirasyon mi.
Management Information System, Provincial Education, Provincial Information Office, Life Center, and Congressman's Office, Silnag. Vice Governor's Office, Sangguniang Panlalawigan Office, Population Commission Office, and Provincial Library. Alright, well, thank you so much, all its teams. So we're gonna Production Management Office, Provincial Social Welfare Development Office, and Provincial Engineering Office. So we go! Office, Provincial Treasury Office, Provincial Planning and Development Office, Provincial Assessor's Office, Provincial Internal Audit Office, and Bids and Awards Committee. So we go naman! Provincial Agriculture Office, Provincial Veterinary Office, Provincial Tourism and Development Office, General Services Office, Provincial Legal Office, and Provincial Environment and Natural Resources Office. Surigao! Police, Purple Team, Ilocos Community College, Provincial Demo Farm, Provincial Jail, Provincial Human Resources Management Office, Surigao. But also district offices as well, because sports is a game to be played healthy physically, mentally, socially. Our event, of course, by Coline, for them to be followed by Ilocos Him.
Apo mga itortorok, marami na po kaplawan tayo ni Apo Governor Jerry Singson, Sangguniang Panlalawigan members, Chief of Offices and Employees, ISPPO family headed by Police Lieutenant Colonel Benji Tremor, friends from the media, ken katakayami na po nga inspirasyon ko nga agserserbi na imbag na oras. After a very crucial period in our province where we have come together to successfully manage the efforts of the COVID-19 pandemic, today we are blessed to be once again standing here together in the best of health, ready to embark in this year's celebration of the PGIS Capital Olympics 2022. The Capital Olympics has always been a very much awaited activity of all PGIS employees, as it is an opportunity to highlight individual skills and abilities in sports and other games. It encourages healthy competition among participants, develops the ability to perform well under pressure and to cope with nerves or performance anxiety. These physical, social, and mental benefits influence how we cope with the daily demands of our work and helps create a stronger bond among peers. This afternoon, let us all do our best and participate in all the activities planned for this event. Let us carry the values of perseverance, fairness, sportsmanship, and most of all, let us all have fun. To all the teams, good luck and do your best. Again, I welcome you all to the opening of the 2022 Capital Olympics. Diyos unay tigina.
All right, of course, thank you so much, Honorable Vice Governor Ryan Singson. Everyone was flabbergasted and enchanted by your warm.
Raise your right hand and follow after me. I state your name. John Chris D. Andres, participant of the Capital Olympics 2022. Do hereby solemnly swear and agree to abide, adhere, and uphold all conditions, agreements, rules, regulations which has been set forth by the organizers of this tournament. As a competitor of this game, I hereby swear and agree to play the game in the highest form of standard of discipline and sportsmanship. No matter if I win or lose. What counts most is how I conduct myself and play my game in the spirit of belongingness. Peace and communal enjoyment with my competitors. I now therefore declare this preserve the tenets and precepts of a true sportsmanship in thought, in word, and with the true spirit of sportsmanship, for the glory of sport and for the honor of my team and my province. So help me God.
Wa po nga mga itortoro. Muna ti amin na po, kablawan tayo, iti Governor ti Probinsya ng Ilocos Sur, Governor Jerry Singson, Vice Governor Ryan Singson, tinigiti kakadwa tayo dito presidential table na po nga bukales. Ken kada kayo amin na po, nga awan tilabas na naimbag nga oras. The father of the modern Olympic Games, Pierre de Coubertin, once said, "The most important thing in the Olympic Games is not winning, but taking part." The Olympic Games is not, the essential thing in life is not conquering, but fighting well. Sports is a major contributor to economic social development. It is a component of education that strives to promote an individual's overall development. It also eliminates hesitation and inspire people to move forward in life despite all challenges and setbacks. Capit Olympics has come again after 2 years of cancelled sporting events, closed gyms and empty stadiums, and with God's grace, we are gathered here today and returning to a new world of sports. Everyone seems so excited. Ilocanos are known to be sports-minded people and give high regards to sports. Capit Olympics 2022 will surely provide avenues to foster our harmonious relationships with the other employees from different departments and will bring a good way to foster cooperation, camaraderie, and unity among us who work for the public service. And on that note, as your humble committee chairman on sports and youth development, I am hoping that this year's Capit Olympics will be a lot more exciting, enjoyable, and worthwhile. May the spirit of sportsmanship reign in every player's heart. May winning be not our driving force and goal. What matters most is how we play every games with our hearts for every battle. Above all, may we all have the ability to direct the purpose of the Capit Olympics 2022 toward our organizational objectives, and may we continue working together toward a common vision. Cherish every part of this event, every dribble, every smash, and every strike. And may all of us savor the doses of fun. Thank you.
Swiftly on the beat.
Ako'y lasing at kanina pa, akala mo ba di ko napapansin? Nakatitig ka sa'king mata, ba't kung makatingin ka sa'kin parang may balak ka? Gusto mo bang ayunin? Halugin ako ng alak pa. The way you look into my eyes, I know you
Officer and Vice Governor, Honorable Ryan Singson, members of the Provincial Board, Honorable Eric Singson of Candon, Honorable Jaja Cabios of the SK, Honorable Gina Cordero of Narvacan, Honorable Art Wandasan of Magsingal, Honorable Mildred Elaido of San Esteban, Honorable Ben Magay of Cervantes, and Honorable Third Ranches of Bigan. Of course, our Provincial Administrator, Mr. Marlon Tagorda, our Executive Secretary, Attorney Gianna, PGIS family, our special team from Capital Olympics, Naimbag nga Aldao. It's the time of the year again, the test of prowess and sports abilities. I know that you all wanted or waited for this year's Capital Olympics. Every one of us here are busy in our offices, performing our duties and responsibilities in the delivery of government services. Most of us feel the stress and the burden of workload. At the same time, hustling with our personal challenges. Capital Olympics 2022 is a good time for us to unwind and enjoy the different sporting events. Let us take this opportunity for stress relief, health improvement, skills development, and most importantly, strengthening the camaraderie between the PGIS employees. Thank you so much to the Provincial Sports Office headed by Mr. Ryan De La Cruz for the preparations. Thank you as well to all PGIS department heads, employees, and the Ilocos Police Provincial Office for your participation. I now declare the Capital Olympics 2022 open. And let the game begin. You're so nice, Gina.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Governor Jeremias, we open Capital Olympics 2022. So, ladies and gentlemen, are you all ready?
Kayo dito sa ating napakagandang stage. Ayan, so akyat po kayo sa ating mga muse and escorts. Please, akyat po tayo sa ating mga muse and escort.
Who am I? You don't need to look. I made you look. Yeah, I look good in my I made you look.
That we would ever be more than friends. Never knew that we would ever be more than friends. But railroad white breaking all the rules. She like a song play, they getting good, yeah. That like someone's supposed to. That is what I'm missing. I'm not a two-stepping man. I said I do not dance. It's a gun inside my pants, and the whole world's in his hands. It depends.
Provincial Jail and Provincial Human Resources Management Office. And of course, that's for the purple team. Take it away.
Try to get his leg back. Wow, look, pew, spin back. Look, pew, spin back.
Now, how can we bring these features and foresight in policy making? As already, maybe you heard Prof. Phoenix a while ago, saying that I'll be proposing a framework for Disability Panlalawigan of Ilocos Sur on how to embed evidence-based policy making in all your activities in the Office of the Vice Governor. Because of course that will ensure that we'll be able to ensure, of course, more future-proof policy. So, dito'y title the lecture book, Evidence-Based and Futures-Proof Policy, Public Policy. I would like to start first, again, Imam Pili and even our colleagues that presented before me, they have already emphasized this forward. I'm not going to delve this too much, but I just wanted to, again, recognize that we are into this kind of world currently, right? That is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Looking, of course, at these characteristics, you can say, when we talk about volatility, we're talking about our environment or our contextual environment of any government agency. Experience, of course, these changes are very disruptive and unpredictable. And if we're going to look at the macro environment ng public organization, or maybe if we're going to look at the environment of public policy, there are lots of things that we have to consider there. Politics even the pandemic, these are moving towards, or they are very volatile conditions, or they are in a volatile conditions. And also uncertain because, it offers again too little information to make, of course, complex decisions. Complex because, of course, the environment is dynamic, very basic. Yung environment natin, yung politika, even our demographic conditions, right? Or the characteristics of our region, we have already in a complex condition. And their environment is ambiguous. So, looking or considering these different conditions, right, of our environment, that VUCA environment, we have, of course, to move towards being very fast, to make it our policies more relevant and conversant to the needs of our community. Just again, before I'll dive into discussing again, right, this evidence-based policy making, I believe, of course, in Lisan started talking already what is this futures thinking, but just want to review you because these are very important context that we have to discuss when we talk about this evidence-based policy. So 7 things that we would like you to know about futures. Right? Okay. Future, of course, cannot be predicted. Ito po yung lagi po namin sinasabi. We are part also of the Philippine Futures Thinking Society and also the UPNC Governance Futures Lab. That the futures cannot, of course, be fully predicted. Hindi po natin kaya gawin yan. That is, of course, what I would like you to know. Right? And that when we think of or looking at our preferred future or our desired future, what we are actually looking at is that we look at different trends. Right? Or we extrapolate information or data from the past, or even what is our current condition nowadays. So we are looking at those data. Even our policies later on. Right? Maybe you can look at or stress test your different policies by looking at the existing data. It's of course based on data. So we should not be just be looking at the rear mirror and driving, and when driving forward, of course, to look at this or understanding this future. Right? So that's the first thing. Second thing is that the future should be pluralized to futures. Iba't iba po yan. You may not really think of, thinking of, eto yung future natin. There are lots of possible or alternative futures. Iba't iba po yan. So the future should be pluralized to futures, not future. We were not talking about future, but it's futures, because there's a lot of alternative futures. So we can possibly look at the scope, of course, the broader scope. What are the possible futures? Some are plausible, probable, or less. There are also preferred futures, and there are also those futures that we say preposterous futures that are impossible. Looking at this, sana clear, klaro siya. This is what we call, of course, we've been introducing the Boros, the futures code, and also a Boros code. Wherein, as you can see here, there's this outside this box here, or outside this circle. It's an impossible or a future that won't ever happen. Right? But you can see here within this code, there are possible futures. Or these are the future, well, when you say about possible future, we're talking about what might happen. I'm going to see what might happen, o posibleng mangyari. Plausible future, this is based of course on our current information or current knowledge, and this could happen. But most of the future that we've been looking at local governments, because we've been in some local governments in the country, they are always looking or interested of this projected future. This is the default. Ito po yung baseline na future. That if we are not going to do anything or where there's no intervention, we will surely lead towards that projected future. That's the baseline future. Yung centralized future na sinasabi ko na this is the default. This is the BAU or the business as usual future. Awan na ramitin kayo ako. That will of course design the future. But there are also probable future. These are likely to happen. Right? And also, this is what we call a preferred future, wherein this is of course, ito po yung interest natin, the desired future. And maybe of course our honorable policymakers, sa Sangguniang Panlalawigan, may have your preferred future. And that preferred future is at your head, of course, very important because the different policies or different ordinances that you are going to craft will decide whether you are capable of achieving that preferred future. These probable, plausible, or possible futures are things that are, of course, there are lots of issues surrounding our province or maybe the whole country that could lead us to possible, plausible, or probable future. And this is, of course, ito po yung pinag-uusapan natin kapag later on, because we will have a workshop. I want you to draw or to imagine different scenarios. 3 years from now, 6 years from now, 9 years from now, 12 years from now, or even 20 years from now. What is that preferred future, right? Or what is that scenario of Ilocos Sur by 20 years or maybe 30 years from now? So that is of course a one workshop that we will be doing later on. What might be those possible futures or plausible futures, or what is that preferred future na gusto natin ma-achieve? Third thing that we have to know about the future. The futures require a change in mindsets. And I believe, of course, our two discussions from Dean Lizan and to Dr. Lily Domingo, they emphasize, of course, this change of mindsets. And we are very happy that you've considered, of course, updating and not only traditional policy-making process, but you want it to be more futures-proof about public policy. And changing mindsets, when we talk about futures, we talk about, often of course, scenarios of the future. Right? Ridiculous in the present exactly because they were not expected. So therefore, of course, foresight should challenge this existing beliefs, that kind of mental models that we have, our values, our mindsets, and behavior, so that we will not be trapped to that business as usual. Yun po yung gusto natin dito, that future that I presented to you a while ago, these different possible or these different forms of futures. And that changing that mindset would like to change this as always, that projected future. That projected future is always a business as usual. And when we are changing that mindset, possibly you will think of a different perspective or view, or what scenario, or what that imagination that we have for the future of Ilocos Sur. How might be the future of Ilocos Sur in terms of tourism? How might be the future of the politics in Ilocos Sur? What might be the future of our infrastructure development? What is the future, for example, of economic development in the region, in the province? So we have to, this is the perfect, of course, body to talk about futures and foresight, because you are into policy making. So changing that mindsets, or even looking at your different policies, looking whether stress testing, I mean when I say stress testing these policies, will it really survive different scenarios that we would like, of course, that we design for the province of Ilocos Sur? Later on, maybe we will have a lot of discussions, of course, on what are maybe a framework that we would like to present to you that you can possibly consider for the office of the Vice Governor or the Sangguniang Panlalawigan, maybe instituting a futures and foresight unit, right, in your organization or in your office. Now, I would like to have this changing mindsets, because this is currently, right, I would like to show different behaviors of public managers or even policy makers in the country. First is this reactive behavior. Itong reactive behavior, ito yung sinasabi namin na firefighting mentality. Dati puor, dati bumbero, stop na DJ for, isn't it? That is very reactive behavior. When there's a problem, you go there and solve the problem. But solving the problem, of course, is in the context of, again, giving or having different strategies. Of course, the strategies may be based on different practices or strategies that are not well thought. So act only when forced to do. Or, you base on the past experiences, or that's past oriented. Now, the mindset of a policymaker with a very reactive behavior is that dissatisfied with the way things are and where they are going. That is dissatisfaction, pagka-reactive ka. And this is, of course, what we can see in our public organizations nowadays. For example, if come to think about COVID-19, we never thought of this, right? Maybe you and I may know that we never thought of the COVID-19 to happen in our generation. But because that happens, now the government reacted, right? Because we are not ready on addressing or we don't have any existing policies in addressing or managing such a tremendous or very, if I make a very one phenomenon that the world faced. Now, there is this also inactive policymakers or public managers. Here, what they are doing is that they ignore, of course, stakeholder concerns. Nothing. They're not thinking about your people. They're not thinking about your public. Right? And they are thinking only about the present, on what they are looking or what they are confronting nowadays. Now, the mindset of this inactive policymaker, it's actually they prevent change. So you can see here in the model, no planning, crisis management, wala. And from now, that's just what you are, what is on your head, it's on what is now. That's it, and there's no change, not doing anything at all. And it ignore, of course, what the people or the public's concerned. Now we have this what we call reactive. This reactive is, it anticipates stakeholders' concern. Ito yung medyo, ito yung public matter, the decision maker or policy maker that he wants, of course, to achieve that future. And is actually predicting the future. And please take note, of course, yung difference ko na sinasabi natin about predicting and building or creating the future. Those are two different things. Right? When you predict, you forecast. Right? But when you build or you try to create that future, that's what we call, of course, foresight. And that's, of course, the commonly used term, of course, for futures and foresight. So the mindset of a proactive guy or proactive policymaker, future is always better than the present, of course. And you are very anxious of reaching that future as soon as possible. Now we have this, what we call interactive. So it engages with stakeholders on an ongoing basis, continuously. You talk to the people, you talk to your stakeholders, And that preferred future is designed or created with the people. The mindset here is that a mindset, not an interactive, the policymaker. Future is open and not linear. When you say, no linear gawin, pag linear, isa lang yan na direction, ano? Ito lang yung gusto mong ma-achieve. Pero yung interactive na policymaker, you're thinking that there are lots of possibilities out there because of different disruptions that are beyond our control. That are beyond our control. But the most important characteristic that you have to have as an interactive policymaker is that engagement with your people. And you think about public value. When we talk about public value as an interactive policymaker, ang tinitingnan po natin dito, as always, no? Yung mga policies po na ginagawa natin, this is not only what you think as a policymaker that your people need, but you also consider your people buying into that policy and that people are also pushing for that policy and that you're meeting together because you have an actual, in a continuous basis, interaction with the public or with your people. You create the future here. And creating the future is of course different to that predicting the future. When you predict the future, yan, one future lang, singular lang yun. But when you create the future, you have these multiple futures because you're looking at the context or looking at the future as open. Now, if we do not know where we would be right now, if we could be whatever we wanted, or how can we possibly know where we will want to be 5 to 10 years from now? You have, of course, now this is what we have been telling you from the discussion of team design and monthly about strategic foresight, about future thinking. And this is, of course, what we want to, for you to look at, that changing mindset. If you are reactive, maybe, or maybe if you are inactive, reactive, maybe, possibly, ito yung gusto natin. Parang, I can say, of course, a lot of reactive policy makers that as soon as possible, dapat ma-achieve na natin ito. And this is, of course, the ideal mindset or behavior that we want for our policymakers or public managers to have, for us to deal with different challenges of our province, or even different disruptions that may come or maybe, again, interrupt the trajectory of our future. Fourth point, the futures are complex. So it is important, of course, to organize again, right? Or to engage on a regular basis with different perspectives of the future. It's scoping the future. Being an anticipatory leader or policy maker, you have to scope what is that future. 10 years from now, or maybe 6 years from now, let's think of that. 6 years from now, what might be the future of Ilocos? And what are the possible conditions or what are the trends 6 years from now? Or maybe 3 years from now. Later on, I would like, of course, for you to divide your different horizons to the context of the local government in the Philippines and the terms of government officials or elected officials in the Philippines. Your first year, 1 to 3 years from now, what are those trends? What are those emerging issues? Or what are those factors that we have to consider 1 to 3 years from now? 4 to 6 years, 4th or to 6th year, what are those trends or issues? And possibly you can see that the futures are really complex. So historically, of course, we try to look at trends. The trends died out. May mga sikat or very high tayo for this year. Maybe the next year, hindi na siya ganun ka-relevant. Right? And then we have to look at weak signals. Ano po itong mga weak signals? Hindi po yung yung sa internet or yung connection. If you are already into future thinking or foresight, you have to scan different developments or maybe different trends, or maybe may mga bagay na hindi pinag-uusapan, pero yung bagay na yun could possibly influence the trajectory of your organization. For example, if I may just give you an example, yung AI 20 years ago, hindi pa masyadong pinag-uusapan yan. Pero see how AI is now really, of course, influencing or affecting the lives of every citizens of the world. Yung emerging issues or weak signals ang sinasabi po namin, for example, sa politika, ano yung mga weak signals na? May mga umuusbong ba na mga iba't ibang mga political dynamics? Sa ekonomiya, mayroon bang mga hindi pinag-uusapan about sa ekonomiya na pwedeng umusbong 3 years from now or 6 years from now? Kung makakatulong yung mga emerging issues na yan, o yung emerging issues kasi pwede sila mag-develop later on na maging trends o pag-uusapan na sa buong probinsya. Ano kaya yung mga yun? We have to know them in advance because if you know them already now, and yung emerging issues or weak signals kasi na yan, pwedeng mangyari or hindi mangyari. Kung gusto natin or beneficial siya, baka pwede nyo yung tulungan on how it will go or will mature immediately. But if that is a problem or issue, maybe you can think of how to deter that problem or that weak signal. Fifth, futures can be perceived through scenarios. Kaya kung mamaya, magsi-scenario building tayo, ano kaya yung scenario 3 years from now ng politika? Ano kaya yung scenario ng economic ng tourism, ng Ilocos Sur, 6 years from now, 12 years from now, or maybe 20 years from now? So, futures can be perceived or can be drawn or can be imagined through scenarios. Pero dito, syempre, yung mga scenarios na ito, hindi lang natin basta gawa-gawa. There are, of course, information or data that we can possibly use that such future may possibly happen. So hindi po yung mga futures na sinasabi natin na mga imposible na wala tayong datos, wala tayong information. Kahit na napakaliit lang na data, very scant data that can provide us an information that it may lead towards that future. Since yung future po is a process, it's a process, not a destination. Kung destination ang pinag-uusapan po natin ito, we will not do anything about it. That's the business as usual. But the future is a process. We create, we build this. So you cannot reach the future or arrive there. Okay? There will always be another 5, 10, or 100 years into the future. 7. The futures belong to those who prepare for them. So for those who are interested of the future, it's of course those who are creating and building this future. That will be yours, of course, when you anticipate and when you prepare for those future. So it belongs to those who think, who imagine and anticipate that future. So those who see beyond existing systems and thinking patterns. So it is something that we would like, of course, again, that when you think of or anticipate or imagining futures, you are now challenging the status quo. Kasi you're challenging, of course, that routinary work. Yung routinary works po natin sa public organizations are leading us towards that business as usual. Paulit-ulit, and we can possibly predict. We can predict what is that future because of that business as usual. But if you imagine, you anticipate, you think of that future, and you create and build that future, then that's yours. It belongs to those, of course, who prepare and work for this future. Now, after discussing, of course, I would like again to bring to you what is this foresight and futures thinking. Again, that if we are bringing this futures and foresight, or foresight and futures thinking in our public policy, and to our Sangguniang Panlalawigan, please take note of this. This is our favorite, of course, conceptualization, or maybe we can possibly get this information on how to operationalize or put into practice yung futures and foresight in our organization. It is a systematic, participatory, intelligence gathering, future intelligence gathering, and medium to long-term vision building. It's a process, of course, that aims at enabling present-day decisions and mobilizing that joint action. Systematic dahil you have to look at later on, if you want to know whether or not you are into futures or foresight and futures thinking already, there are three important things that I would like also to mention to you. Bukod po dito sa explanation na ito. But easily you can identify or think, or maybe you can say that you are in foresight and futures thinking activity already if you first do trends analysis. When you look at different trends in your province, anong trend ng politika sa probinsya? Anong trend ng socio-economic factors sa probinsya? Ano kaya yung trend sa demographics and other factors outside, of course, our organization? If you are doing that and think or see how these different changes or disruptions or maybe developments are influencing your citizens or your people or even your individuality or you as a person or as a government official, you are already, of course, in the first step of that futures or foresight and futures thinking. Hindi natin iniiwanan kung ano yung nangyayari sa labas. And it should be systematic manner. Of course, for our policymakers, sa dami-dami na nag-iisip natin, the unit or the office may have maybe the capability of looking at the trends. Continuous dapat siya kung na ginagawa. We are already doing that at UP and CPAN, understanding, of course, what are the political dynamics or the social and other aspects of the technological developments. We're doing that in a regular basis now at UP and CPAN. And we are using this to inform our decision-making process. And that's also important. That's the first one. Futures, you are into foresight and futures if you do a systematic analysis of your different trends that are happening outside our context in the organization. Second, nag-visioning na tayo. Considering all those different trends, nagsa-scenario building ka na. With these developments, with these trends, ano kaya yung magiging future? What are those possible futures of the province in terms of politics with these trends? With the economic development, with the technological development, with the environment or the economy. Third, you ensure that such futures work, or when you try to envision that future, again, you have to bring that behavior or mindset of being interactive. It should be participatory. It should be long-term. Now, yung long-term na sinasabi po natin when we talk about foresight and futures thinking is that 20 years or more. But of course, we can design our own time horizon with the context, of course, of our local government in terms of our elected government officials. First 3 years, 6 years, 9 years, 12 years, or more. And if you are doing that, of course, you are already anticipating what are the futures, and you identify what are those specific strategies towards those envisioned scenarios. Right, this is what I'm talking about. That your futures and foresight, the futures thinking and foresight, aim to describe, of course, change 20 to 50 years into the future. Medyo mahirap, pero it is of course the culture that we have in public organization, even in our society in the Philippines. That very short-termist perspective. Kahapon po, last night pala, I was with some senior officials ng ating bansa, mga USEC, and I taught them also this workshop. Ang thinking nila lagi, first 3 years, ang sabi ko, and wala na tayo sa futures or foresight approach. Because we are just thinking of that present, yung current lang. Yung ganong thinking pa rin na andun pa rin sa kanila. Yung pagiging, that they want to achieve right away kung ano yung nasa present. That's why we are very short-term na thinking yung approach natin. As always. Now, I was of course surprised, even discussing this with them, ganun pa rin yung mindset nila. I think of course, it may take a lot of courage or maybe a lot of process that we have to do so that they will acknowledge or recognize that long-term oriented public organizations or thinking will benefit, of course, even our generations to come. Now, let me go to these three P's ng foresight. Prospective, participative, and policy-related. So when we talk about foresight in this perspective, it's future-oriented. That's of course the main thing there. It probes, of course, the impact of change. What are the shocks and disruptions on future realities? In a rigorous, of course, systematic and unbiased manner, perspective approach. In participative, again, perspective siya, participative, because we are bringing all the stakeholders here, hindi lang po tayo. A broad range, of course, of participation of a broad range of perspectives. We want to avoid the group think here. Na tayo lang, yung group thinking that we would like to avoid here. And of course, use that collective intelligence to produce worldwide images of the future. Usually, if you remember, yung ambition natin 2040, that's of course a very interesting document of Meta, and we've been into that, and they've been sharing a lot about Ambition 2040. I don't have any, of course, issue about Ambition 2040, but you know who created that, right? Arsenio M. Balisacan, Ilocano rin tayo nga po. AMB, kaya Ambition 2040. Ambition yun ni Arsenio M. Balisacan. Gawa po nila yan. And if you're going to submit the document to a panel na magre-review, what was missing there for me as an academic is this perspective of participative. They're thinking of that future, but that's only the perspective of experts, not of our citizens. We miss our public there. And that, of course, my comment as an academic. If that will be submitted before me, as a panel, ang wala ko sa kanya ito, yung participative. It's prospective, it's futures-oriented, yes. Policy-related, yes. But they failed on this participative perspective. And that will, of course, again, will not bring us to the buy-in. You can think about, there's a news, of course, that's coming out. OWA, they said that yung 4 Ps hindi daw niya na-achieve. Yung intention, yung 4 Ps. And we've been investing a lot of money on that. Did they consider really that, we thought, of course, our policymakers thought that these 4 Ps will bring or help our people to address issues of poverty. But the findings that are coming out now, they're saying it's not. Hindi niya na-achieve. Yung purpose niya. You know what is the problem there? Again, we design or develop those policies that there is this group thinking, experts, or even policymakers saying that this is what our people need. But if you're going to ask your people, hindi po yan ang kailangan namin. Of course, we will take that. Now, you can see what are those consequences of that. Bringing, of course, if you think of or strengthening your different policies, or maybe later on your ordinances. Your ordinances, having that foresight perspective or lens on it, that's perspective, participative, and of course, that policy-related. Siyempre, later on, pag-usapan natin, ano ba yung public policy ulit? Review, again. But I want you to have these advanced ideas, or maybe some knowledge about the three P's of foresight. For the policy related, of course, sponsored, championed, and driven by public leaders and servants. And foresight uses long-term strategic management. And then you were able, of course, to stress test itong mga policies ninyo. What are those possible uncertainties or disruption that we may encounter in the future? And the most important thing I would like to emphasize, of course, this participative perspective or lens of foresight. Now, why is foresight and future thinking important? Again, I want again to show you, this is sort of summary already of what we've discussed in the previous sessions, but these are relevant for our next session about evidence-based. It prevents the short-termism by helping, of course, understanding the long-term issues or challenges that shapes, of course, the future development of policy area. If we employ or integrate or embed foresight and future thinking, that is in a way shying away or going away from that short-termist perspectives in policy making. And of course, we bring that long-term direction of policy. Second, future thinking allows, of course, policymakers to think through future intended and unintended consequences of policies. If we're going to make, of course, different ordinances, thinking again, the three P's, prospective, participative, and policy related, you may be able to address or may be able to know what are those intended and unintended consequences of a certain public policy. Third, future thinking enables policymakers to identify, analyze, and test the emerging issues that are influencing the policy issue and allows them to negotiate their uncertainties. In future thinking, it's not only of course making public policies, you also will determine ano kaya yung mga emerging issues, ano kaya yung mga weak signals dito if we will have these policies. Ano kaya yung mga possible consequences or uncertainties that we may encounter along the way when we have these policies. Fourth, future thinking encourages exploration beyond assumed future true scenarios. So, ang common practice natin for futures and foresight or foresight and futures thinking, we generate or develop those different scenarios. Fifth, futures thinking reduces risk by developing policy that is more resilient to changing conditions and unanticipated disruptions. And powers take advantage, of course, that you may take advantage of new financial and technological opportunities. It's more resilient policy making. Six, futures thinking is not only used for describing possible futures, it is also used to develop a vision of the preferred future. Developing, of course, that preferred future. So preferred futures are visions for the longer term. They represent a shared vision of all stakeholders. So yun, medyo medyo madugulan yung discussion, but of course this is something that we have to think or rethink. Imagine or to reimagine, if I may. Because we will go down to this evidence-based policy making. But of course, having that lens already, or having that handle of foresight and futures thinking, I think it will be very easy for us to understand this evidence-based policy making. Because evidence-based policy making, of course, integrated, again, in that process of foresight. Let me just give you, or maybe just a review. Ano ba yung public policy? just a quick review. Let me just, maybe if you can just have that. So, yung public policy po, wala talaga, and of course, the ordinances that we are making in in the provincial government is a form of a public policy. And that I would like you to understand again that policy is made in response to some sort of a problem that requires attention. There's a problem, there's an issue. Please remember also that policy or public policy, or maybe if I may, specifically ordinances, are made on the public's behalf. These are made on the public's behalf. Third point that I would like you to again understand is that policy is of course oriented toward a goal or desired state, such as the solution of a problem. Remember that this is a response not to a problem. Maybe we have issues or problems here at Ilocos Sur, and that we create, of course, or identify policies. And policy, of course, is ultimately made by governments. Even if the ideas come from outside government or through the interaction of government and non-governmental actors. So, maybe 4 important points or keywords that we have to understand when we talk about public policy and when we talk about creating or passing an ordinance. This is a response to a specific problem or issue. Second, that it is made on behalf of our public, of our people, or on behalf of the citizens of Ilocos Sur. Policy is of course a solution to a problem, and that's made by governments. Policy is interpreted and implemented, of course, either by public and private actors. And lastly, policy is what the government chooses to do or not to do. Policy po siya. Kung halimbawa ayaw ng gobyerno na a typical example that I can give is that if we don't like to or we don't say anything about the West Philippine Sea, that's the policy of the government. If we don't like to do anything about an issue or maybe a concern, that's the public policy. So please remember that public policy is what the government choose to do or not to do. But of course, again, you have to relate this public policy to these important characteristics that I've been mentioning to you. That is a solution that addresses or response to a problem. You're making this on behalf of the public. And that solution to a problem made by the governments, and of course you can also look at this other characteristics, but the most important definition that we've been teaching, of course, at UPNC the public policy, this is what governments choose to do or not to do. So it becomes a public policy. Kung ayaw po natin na na-actionan yung mga ibang mga problema dyan, magiging public policy. Kung gusto po natin actionan, that becomes, of course, the public policy. So, what makes a public policy public? I think this is, of course, an important thing that we would like to also share. Because the public policy, of course, that's done on behalf of the public. And we are always thinking about this public interest. And that when we think about public interest, we're thinking about that value for the people. No, yung mga different policies po na gagawin. So public interest, it assumes, of course, a broader desires and needs of the public, in whose name policy is made. So public interest is hard to define, but it's something which all policy advocates appeal. So one important characteristic, right, for a public policy to be public is that, as always, we're thinking the desire or what is that interest of our public. Not, of course, kasi may evolution din po yan ng mga different public policies. Before, yung napaka-traditional na pagtingin sa public policy, yung public interest, ang nag-define noon ay mga politicians or mga experts. Pero sa panahon po natin ngayon, ang nag-decide po ng public interest ay ang publiko. And then of course, that's how public policy are made, of course, public. Pasok po tayo dito sa evidence-based policy making. Kasi later on, pagbigyan nyo na ako, talk lang muna tayo ngayon, then questions later on, we have a lunch, then mag-workshop po tayo ng hapon. Evidence-based policy making, i-ano ko muna, no? Gusto ko lang i-ano natin, kung pag-uusapan natin ang evidence-based policy making, may pagkakaiba yan dun sa mga evidence na nilalabas ng mga nagre-research na tulad ko, na isang scholar po ng public administration. Yung policy makers evidence, ang tinatawag ko ng colloquial or narrative, kaiba po dun sa researchers evidence wherein it's scientific. Highly contextual dahil tinitignan po natin yung konteksto mismo ng public policy na nagagawin. And sa mga researchers, generalizable yan. Ibig sabihin, ano bang mga ebidensya nakikita that should be applied to a general context. Contextual because you have to look at specific context of the policy. Policy relevant. And when we say policy relevant, again, the different characteristics of a public policy that I mentioned a while ago, it addresses, of course, a specific issue or problem. And here, a researcher, contribution to knowledge, yan po yung namin ko natin. This policy, yung evidence, is clear message of response because that addresses a problem. Here, what are the caveats and qualifications for researchers? And yung policy, for policymakers, dapat timely. Kasi you are addressing a specific issue. Baka naman yung policy ninyo, nagpasuna. Wala yung problema, hindi na natin and then it already, of course, passed. And this, as a researcher, it takes time, so of course, time as needed. So evidence-based policy is considered, of course, a broad range of may research evidence, may ebidensya na from citizens and other stakeholders, evidence from practice and policy implementation as part of the process. If you're going to look at the evidence, of course, that we consider for public policy, as you can see here, there's a research evidence, evidence from your people, evidence from practice, and also evidence of data that can possibly support our specific policies. Yeah. These are types of evidence that we have to consider for public policy. The first evidence there is yung data. That's why we've been pushing for data-driven policy making. So this is, of course, a collection, collected, of course, to be examined and considered and used to help for decision making. So yung data, of course, when you draw later on different policies, nakabasa siya sa different data. Now, these are, of course, important factors or important conditions that we have to look at when we propose different alternatives or policy alternatives or when we think about ordinances that we have to pass. So there are different types of data. Meron po tayo sinasabing qualitative data, meron din tayo sinasabing quantitative data. For our board members or to our Sangguniang Panlalawigan members, if you are into this, I think you are really strong, of course, on data, that you base your ordinances on data. So dito, yung qualitative data na sinasabi namin is that these are descriptive or qualitative information. Or maybe you can get them. It asks the question who, which, what, when, where, and why. For example, since a feedback form using open-ended written answers, will produce a qualitative data. Kung kakayanin ninyo, pwede naman mag-interview pa para magkaroon tayo ng qualitative data. Yung quantitative data naman, these are, of course, these are numerical data. Mga statistics, pwede natin tingnan. Or maybe you can have, or you can collect your own quantitative data, and it answers, of course, how many, to what extent, or how much questions. So for example, kung may feedback from, or you collect information or quantitative data through online, they can take information or produce for you to get quantitative data. Of course, the quantitative data that you can easily access, mga statistical data or numerical data from different offices. The second type of data or evidence that we have to look at is that research evidence. Of course, this research evidence is produced a formal, comprehensive, or rigorous process that uses, of course, both primary and secondary literature. Dito, ang siguro maganda nating explore for us is that to partner to different universities that are doing specific research that can possibly help us for research evidence. Or if you are capable of doing it, you can possibly have your own research evidence. The practice-informed evidence. Itong practice-informed evidence is a knowledge, of course, gained from implementing policy and practice. That's why siguro dun sa mga hearings natin, we invite SMEs or subject matter experts. That we get more information from them, or maybe from different organizations that can provide us that practice or practice-informed evidence to help craft that public policy, or to make it, of course, an evidence-based public policy. This is the most important for me as a evaluator. Of course, to consider those data, consider those citizens, the practice-informed research, but now the citizens' evidence data. Or participatory evidence, ito yung sinasabi namin, participatory evidence. It is held by citizens, both individually and collectively, drawing on their daily lives. So it's a knowledge of a place of culture, people and their challenges gained through direct experience. So, if you are able to bring all these types of evidence in your ordinances, in your strategies, or in your programs, using data, using practice-informed evidence, research and citizen evidence, and we can possibly, of course, craft different strategies that can help us address a specific problem or issue. So, the citizen evidence, of course, in the context of local government in the Philippines, you can possibly see citizens' participation in different levels, from barangay to provincial level. Given their participation, of course, in policy making. So you can do stakeholder consultations, social audits, community mapping, or monitoring exercises would be good information or data that we can use from establishing citizen evidence. Now, why evidence-based policy making is important? Bakit ito importante? And when I say evidence-based policy making, I just, again, just to inform you that your ordinances or whatever policies should be based from that data, from practice, from research, and from citizens' perspective. So, this will lead us towards anticipatory policy making if we bring evidence-based data. Second, you can possibly, of course, bring, when you have data or bring evidence in your policy making, that will lead us, of course, to better anticipation, policy innovation, and future proofing. That may be discussed later on in our after the session, in previous one. Now, there are two main sources na kung bakit nag-fail yung mga policies po natin or ordinances natin. And this will maybe wrap up the discussion about this evidence-based policy making. There are two issues that we would like for some sort of evidence. First is that inadequate data collected as evidence. Because of that, we would like first to address that data validity and quality issues. And inappropriate methods used to generate this evidence. So it's not only getting those evidence, those data from the citizens, but on how we process them is also an issue. Kung paano ba natin pinaprocess ito yung mga na-generate natin ng mga evidence. So two things, right method and right evidence or right data. Let me not, baka mas masyadong technical, but let me just go to this one. So yung sinasabi ng po namin dito is that, of course, this is a typology for evidence-based public policy. If you can see here, this is of course what we want to achieve, yung scientific administration, that we are doing the right thing right. That scientific administration or that scientific approach in public policy making. So, data collected as evidence, if that is adequate data, and you employed appropriate method for processing that data, now you are committing this, that you are now, of course, doing the right thing right. Pwede din mangyari, na ganito yung posibleng mangyari. You make an ordinance or a policy with an inadequate evidence or data. And you also employ appropriate method in analyzing that data. But that will lead to data failure. And that's doing the wrong thing right. Now, posible din na adequate yung data mo, pero mali, yung method na ginamit mo sa pag-aanalisa dyan sa data na yan. That's a method failure or what we call doing the right thing wrong. And dito, lastly, you have inadequate data na nga, hindi mo nga tinignan yung mga evidence na yan, mali ba yung ginamit mo na approach sa pag-aanalisa sa data na yan, that's a total fiasco. That's doing the wrong thing wrong.
Kaya't mo kanayon na nakakondisyon ti motor mo, saan tayo abaybayan ngagdadael?